Her mother lied that she was with another man. The billionaire CEO refused her baby and divorced her. 4 years later, he saw her with twins and fell to his knees in regret. Hi, my beautiful and loyal family. Welcome back to your safe and loving home, Mr. Peter's family. May the Almighty lift every woman above the shadows of doubt, wrap her in courage that never falters, and place peace in her heart that no storm can shake. May your tears be transformed into rivers of strength, your struggles blossom into triumphs, and your quiet prayers rise as miracles waiting to meet you. You are the light that softens the darkest nights, the warmth that steadies every heart around you, and the love that never asks for recognition yet changes everything. May your days be gentle, your spirit unbreakable, and your soul bathed in endless hope. My precious family, never underestimate the power of your presence. Your love keeps this home alive. A like is a blessing, a comment is a prayer shared. If your heart carries love, like this video. If your spirit walks in faith, comment, "I'm with Mr. Peter." The photograph that destroyed Binta's marriage was a masterpiece of deception, and Eleanor Miller had been very, very proud of it. Jason stood in his mother's hospital suite, the private room that cost more per night than most people earned in a month, and watched the woman who raised him struggle for breath. The cancer had hollowed her out, left nothing but paper-thin skin stretched over bird bones and a confession that was tearing his world apart. "I hired him," Eleanor whispered, her voice crackling like dead leaves. "The man in the photographs, professional actor, handsome enough to be believable. I paid him $20,000 to spend one afternoon in various locations with your wife." Jason felt his legs weaken. He gripped the edge of her bed. "Mother, what are you saying?" "I'm saying I destroyed your marriage, Jason. Binta was faithful. She was always faithful. I couldn't bear it. My son, my only child, married to a black woman. What would the country club say? What would the board members think? What about the family legacy?" The machines beeped steadily, measuring the last moments of a woman who had measured people by their skin color and found some wanting. Jason wanted to scream, wanted to rage, but his voice came out broken. "The baby. She was pregnant, 6 months pregnant when I threw her out." Eleanor's eyes, once sharp and calculating, now swam with tears that looked more like regret for getting caught than genuine remorse. "Twins, actually. She was carrying twins. I found out from her medical records after you'd already divorced her. 2 granddaughters I'll never meet. Perhaps that's my real punishment." Jason staggered backward, his shoulder hitting the wall. The room tilted. 4 years ago, he'd looked at those photographs, seen his pregnant wife apparently kissing another man, seen them entering a hotel together, and he'd believed it instantly. He hadn't asked questions, hadn't demanded her side of the story. He'd simply looked at her swollen belly and felt betrayed, felt foolish, felt like every wealthy man who'd been trapped by a woman seeking a payday. "You thought I'd be grateful," Jason said, his voice hollow. "You thought you were protecting me. I was protecting the Miller name. By making me a monster?" Jason's hands shook. "I called her a whore, Mother. I told her that baby wasn't mine. I had security escort her out of our home like she was trash. She had nothing. No family, no money of her own because I'd insisted she quit her job. 6 months pregnant with twins, and I threw her into the street because I believed you over her." Eleanor reached for him with a skeletal hand, but Jason stepped away. The distance between them felt like a canyon, like every lie she'd ever told had carved it deeper. "The investigator you hired, the witnesses who said they'd seen her with him multiple times, the hotel records showing a room in her name, all of it was fabricated. All of it." Jason walked to the window, looking out over the city his family had helped build. Somewhere down there, Binta was alive. His daughters were alive. They'd been alive this whole time and he'd never known. He'd moved on, gotten engaged to Victoria, built his company larger, attended charity galas where people praised his business acumen while he tried not to think about the pregnant woman he'd discarded. "The divorce settlement," Jason said. $50 million. Did she take it?" "I don't know. I never checked." Jason pulled out his phone, dialing his attorney's private line. The conversation was brief, brutal. When he hung up, he felt something crack inside his chest. She never cashed the check, never touched a single penny. My investigator tried to find her after the divorce was finalized to ensure the paperwork was complete. She'd vanished, changed her name legally, closed every account, disappeared completely with my children. Eleanor made a sound that might have been regret. I'm dying, Jason. I needed you to know the truth before I go. What you do with it is your choice, but you deserve to know you destroyed an innocent woman for nothing. Jason turned to face his mother, this woman who had taught him right from wrong, who had taken him to church every Sunday, who had smiled for photographs while planning to ruin her life. You're not dying fast enough. He walked out of the hospital room, left Eleanor calling his name, and stood in the hallway trying to remember how to breathe. Hospital staff moved around him, concerned faces asking if he needed help, but Jason couldn't hear them over the roaring in his head. He'd thrown away everything. His wife had loved him. She'd been carrying his daughters, his children, and he'd called her a liar. He'd forced her to sign papers relinquishing any claim to the child, made her initial every page while she sobbed and swore she'd been faithful. He'd watched her leave through security cameras, seen her stumble on the driveway, seen her walk away with one suitcase and nothing else. Jason made it to his car before he vomited in the parking garage, his body rejecting the truth the way he'd rejected his wife. When he could drive, he went home to his penthouse, walked past Victoria planning their wedding, and locked himself in his office. The photographs were still there, in a manila folder he'd kept as a reminder to never trust too easily again. He looked at them now, seeing what he'd been too angry to see before. Binta's body language was wrong. She was pulling away in the kissing shot, not leaning in. Her face in the hotel lobby photograph showed confusion, not guilt. The man beside her looked like he was posing, while she looked like she wanted to run. He'd seen what he expected to see, what his mother had trained him to see. Jason's phone buzzed with a message from his head of security. The search for Binta Peter had officially begun. Every resource his company possessed was now dedicated to finding the woman he'd destroyed and the daughters he'd never met. But as Jason sat in his office, surrounded by awards and achievements that suddenly felt meaningless, he wondered what he'd do if he found her. What could he possibly say? How could he ever make this right? His phone buzzed again. This time, a different message. His investigator had found something interesting. A CEO named B. Morrison had founded a tech company that was quietly stealing Jason's biggest clients. The company was called Ascend Technologies. They'd grown impossibly fast, appeared from nowhere, and seemed to know Miller Global's every weakness. Jason pulled up the company information, searching for any connection to Binta. The corporation was privately held, the ownership structure deliberately obscured, but there was one detail that made his blood run cold. Ascend Technologies had been founded exactly 9 months after he'd divorced his wife. The company's mission statement, buried in early press releases, read, "For every woman who had to build herself from ashes." Jason stared at those words until they blurred. Then he grabbed his keys and drove back to the hospital, but Eleanor had already slipped into unconsciousness. She would die 3 days later, taking her apologies with her, leaving Jason alone with the wreckage of his choices. But in that moment, sitting beside the mother who had destroyed his family to save her pride, Jason Miller made a decision. He would find Binta. He would find his daughters. And he would spend the rest of his life trying to earn something he knew he could never deserve. Forgiveness. Chapter 2. The Woman Who Disappeared. Binta Peter had learned to make herself invisible. It was easier than constantly proving she deserved to exist. 4 years ago, on the day her marriage ended, she'd stood in the driveway of the Miller mansion with a single suitcase and felt her babies kick inside her. The security guard who'd escorted her out had looked uncomfortable, kept glancing at her pregnant belly, but he'd still watched her until she reached the property line, until she was no longer Jason's problem. She'd walked 3 miles to a bus stop because she didn't have money for a taxi. Every penny in their joint accounts had been frozen the moment Jason's lawyers filed the divorce papers. Her phone had been disconnected, her credit cards declined. She owned nothing but the clothes on her back and the babies in her womb, and Jason had made very clear he wanted no part of either. The bus driver had taken pity on her, let her ride without paying. An elderly woman had offered her a granola bar. Small kindnesses from strangers, while the man who'd promised to love her forever called her a whore and slammed the door in her face. Binta had ended up at a women's shelter, the kind of place she'd once donated to without truly understanding what desperation looked like. She'd shared a room with 3 other women, all of them running from something. She'd learned to sleep through crying babies and nightmares, learned to make a meal from nothing, learned that rock bottom had a basement and the basement had sub-levels she'd never imagined existed. She'd given birth alone, no husband, no family, just a nurse who held her hand and told her she was strong, while Binta pushed twin daughters into a world that had already proven itself cruel. The shelter director had helped her file paperwork for a legal name change. Binta Peter became Binta Morrison, and 6 weeks after giving birth, she'd registered a business with her last $200. Now, 4 years later, Binta Morrison stood in her corner office overlooking the city and remembered that woman in the shelter. She remembered her. She honored her. But she was no longer her. Ms. Morrison, the quarterly reports are ready for your review. Her assistant, Lauren, placed a tablet on the desk. Lauren was efficient, loyal, and had no idea that her boss had once been married to the CEO of their biggest competitor. No one knew. Binta had buried that life so deep that some days she almost believed it had happened to someone else. Thank you, Lauren. Please hold my calls for the next hour. Alone again, Binta pulled up the financial reports that showed Ascend Technologies was now worth more than Miller Global Industries. She'd done it. Built an empire from nothing while raising twin daughters who would never know poverty, never know what it felt like to be thrown away like garbage. Her phone chimed with a reminder, school pickup in 2 hours. Amara and Zuri attended the best private academy in the city, the kind of school where Jason had once planned to send his children. The irony wasn't lost on Binta. Her daughters walked those hallowed halls while his company crumbled. Mommy works hard so we can have good things, she told them when they were old enough to ask questions. And we don't need anybody else. The girls had accepted this. They were happy, well-adjusted, brilliant. Amara had inherited Jason's analytical mind, could solve puzzles that baffled adults, approached the world like a chess game waiting to be won. Zuri had inherited Binta's empathy, created art that made teachers cry, asked questions about feelings that cut straight to truth. Neither girl knew their father had thrown them away before they were born. Neither girl knew they had a father at all, really. Binta had told them their daddy had gone away, which was technically true. She'd left out the part where he'd ordered them away, where he'd made her sign documents declaring them illegitimate, where he'd looked at her pregnant body with disgust. Some truths were too heavy for 4-year-old shoulders. Binta's computer pinged with an alert. Her security system had flagged unusual activity. Someone was making inquiries about B. Morrison, trying to connect her current identity to her past. The digital walls she'd built were solid, but someone was testing them. She knew who it was before her head of security confirmed it. Jason Miller was looking for her. Interesting, she murmured, watching the report detail his investigators' attempts to breach her privacy. He finally noticed me. Lauren buzzed the intercom. Ms. Morrison, there's a gentleman here to see you. He doesn't have an appointment, but he says it's urgent. A Mr. Jason Miller? Binta's finger hovered over the button. This was the moment she'd prepared for, the confrontation she'd imagined 1,000 times. But now that it was here, she felt nothing but cold calculation. Tell security to escort him out. Inform him that Ms. Morrison does not take unscheduled meetings, and that any future attempts to contact me without going through proper channels will be considered harassment. Yes, ma'am. Binta pulled up the security feed on her monitor, watched Jason in her lobby. He looked older, worn in ways that had nothing to do with age. Good. He should look haunted. He should feel every day of the suffering he'd caused. He was talking to her security guards, gesturing, clearly frustrated. One guard put a hand on his arm and Jason jerked away but didn't fight. He looked up at the cameras as if he knew she was watching, his mouth forming words she couldn't hear but could guess. Please. I need to talk to you, please. Binta closed the feed. Let him beg. Let him feel what it was like to have doors slammed in his face. She had work to do, daughters to raise, a company to run. Jason Miller was her past, and she'd already spent too much energy ensuring he stayed there. But that night, lying in bed after tucking Amara and Zuri into their rooms, Binta couldn't stop thinking about that look on his face. Desperate. Lost. Exactly how she'd looked 4 years ago when she'd begged him to believe her, when she'd sworn on their unborn babies' lives that she'd never betrayed him. He hadn't believed her then. She wouldn't make the mistake of caring about his pain now. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. She should delete it, block it. But curiosity was a dangerous thing. I know the truth. My mother confessed everything before she died. Please, Binta. I need to see you. I need to see them. I know I have no right, but please. Binta stared at those words until they blurred. Eleanor was dead. The woman who'd orchestrated her destruction was gone, and Jason knew. He knew she'd been innocent. He knew he'd destroyed his family for nothing. She deleted the message, blocked the number, and when she finally fell asleep, she dreamed of that day in the driveway. Except this time she wasn't the one walking away. This time Jason was on his knees, begging her to stay, and she just kept walking. When she woke up, her pillow was wet with tears she didn't remember shedding. Binta wiped her face, checked on her sleeping daughters, and made herself a promise. If Jason Miller wanted to see his children, he would have to go through hell first, and even then, he might find the door locked. Some things, once broken, could never be made whole again. Binta had learned to live with the cracks. Now Jason would learn what it meant to be shattered. Chapter 3. Built from ashes. Revenge, Binta had learned, was best served as success. Cold, undeniable, and infinitely more satisfying than anger. The morning after blocking Jason's message, Binta woke at dawn as she always did. Her routine was sacred, built from the discipline of a woman who'd had to create structure from chaos. She showered, dressed in a tailored suit that cost more than her entire first month's salary had been, and stood in front of the mirror that once reflected a broken woman, but now showed someone powerful. In the kitchen, she made breakfast while her daughters slept. Pancakes from scratch, fresh fruit, the kind of meal that said, "You are loved," in ways words sometimes couldn't. When Amara and Zuri stumbled out in their matching pajamas, sleepy-eyed and beautiful, Binta felt the familiar ache of fierce protection. "Morning, my loves." "Morning, Mama." Zuri climbed into her chair, still half asleep. "Can we have syrup?" "Just a little. And Amara, don't try to negotiate for more by using mathematical ratios. I've told you that doesn't work." Amara, caught before she could speak, grinned. Worth trying. These moments were everything. This was why Binta had clawed her way up from nothing. Not revenge, though that had fueled some of her darkest nights. Not money, though security mattered. But this, the sound of her daughters laughing over breakfast, the normalcy of syrup debates and morning routines. Jason had thrown this away. He'd looked at her pregnant body and decided she wasn't worth believing, that his mother's lies were more credible than his wife's truth. He'd discarded the possibility of these mornings, these small, perfect moments that made life worth living. After dropping the girls at school, Binta drove to her office and walked into a board meeting that would decide the future of Miller Global Industries. Her team had worked for months acquiring Miller Global's debt, buying out their investors, systematically dismantling the empire Jason had spent years building. Today was the final vote. "Ladies and gentlemen," Binta said, standing at the head of the table, "Miller Global Industries has been hemorrhaging clients for 18 months. Their last 3 product launches failed. Their stock price has dropped 60%. They're vulnerable, and we're in position to acquire them at a fraction of their actual worth." "Why do we want them?" asked her CFO, Michael. "They're struggling. We're successful. Why absorb their problems?" Binta smiled, and it was the smile of a woman who'd learned to weaponize her pain. Because sometimes you acquire something not for what it is, but for what it represents. Miller Global has prestige, connections, legacy clients who are loyal to the name. We absorb them, we absorb their reputation. Plus, their CEO is distracted, making poor decisions. Now is the time. She didn't mention that the CEO had once been her husband. Didn't mention that every strategic move she'd made against his company had been personal. Professional revenge was still revenge, just prettier. The vote was unanimous. Ascend Technologies would begin the hostile takeover immediately. Binta left the meeting and found Lauren waiting with an urgent message. Ms. Morrison, Jason Miller is here again. Security tried to remove him, but he's insisting on speaking with you. He says he'll wait in the lobby all day if necessary. Through her office window, Binta could see him. Jason was sitting in her lobby, looking out of place among the modern furniture and thriving plants. He'd been there since the building opened. 3 hours, just waiting. Part of her wanted to let him sit there forever, let him feel what it was like to be dismissed, to be invisible. But another part, the part she tried to silence, was curious. What did he want to say? What words could possibly matter after what he'd done? Send him up, Binta said finally. Give me 10 minutes, then show him in. Lauren's surprise was visible but professional. Yes, ma'am. Alone in her office, Binta stood at the window and tried to prepare herself. She hadn't seen Jason face to face since the day he'd thrown her out. She'd seen photographs, watched him from a distance at charity events she knew he'd attend, but never this close. Never in her space, her territory, where she held all the power. The woman who'd loved him was dead. Binta had buried her in that shelter, in the delivery room where she'd screamed through labor alone, in the countless nights she'd worked until dawn while her babies slept. That woman had believed in love, in loyalty, in the goodness of the man she'd married. This woman knew better. The knock came. Lauren opened the door, and Jason Miller walked into Binta's office looking like a man who'd lost everything, which technically he had, or was about to. Binta. Her name on his lips sounded like a prayer and an apology combined. Mr. Miller. She kept her voice cold, professional. You have 5 minutes. Speak. He flinched at the formality, at being reduced to a stranger in the presence of the woman who'd once been his wife. Good. Let him feel every ounce of the distance he'd created. I know the truth. My mother confessed before she died. Everything was fabricated, the affair, the photographs, all of it. You were faithful, and I destroyed you for believing her lies. Jason's voice cracked. I'm so sorry. I know that's not enough, that nothing could ever be enough, but I need you to know I'm sorry. Binta stared at him, unmoved. You're sorry? How lovely. Tell me, Jason, what exactly are you sorry for? For believing your mother? For not believing me? For throwing your pregnant wife into the street? For forcing me to sign away my rights to my own children? Be specific. I want to know which part haunts you most. All of it. Every moment of it. I wake up every day knowing I destroyed the best thing in my life because I was too proud, too angry, too quick to believe the worst of you. I should have asked you. I should have listened. I should have... You should have loved me, Binta interrupted, her voice sharp as glass. That's what marriage means. You love someone enough to trust them, even when evidence suggests otherwise. You fight for them. You believe in them. But you didn't love me, Jason. You loved the idea of me until it became inconvenient. That's not true. I loved you. I still don't. Binta held up her hand, stopping him. Don't you dare tell me you love me. You have no idea what love is. Love doesn't throw someone away. Love doesn't destroy someone without even asking their side of the story. Jason's eyes filled with tears, but Binta felt nothing. She'd cried all her tears in that shelter, in the delivery room, in the months when her daughters wouldn't sleep, and she was so exhausted she couldn't remember her own name. She had no sympathy left for his pain. I know about our daughters, Jason said quietly. Twins. You were carrying twins, and I threw you out. Please, Binta, let me see them. Let me try to make this right. Make it right? Binta laughed, and it was a sound without humor. You think you can make it right? They're 4 years old, Jason. 4 years of birthdays, first words, first steps, sleepless nights, sick days, milestones you missed because you decided they didn't exist. You threw away their entire lives, mine too, and now you want to make it right? I want to try. Please, I'm begging you. Good, beg. Feel what it's like to plead with someone who has all the power while you have none. Feel what it's like to be dismissed and discarded. This is what you deserve, Jason. This exact feeling, multiplied by every day I've lived since you destroyed me. Binta pressed the intercom. Lauren, please show Mr. Miller out. And make a note. He's no longer welcome in this building. Security should remove him on sight if he returns. Binta, please. Ms. Morrison, she corrected. You don't get to use my first name. You lost that right when you threw me away. Now leave my office. Leave my building, and stay away from me and my daughters, or I'll file harassment charges so fast you'll wish your mother's lies were the worst thing that ever happened to you. Jason stood there, broken and pleading, and Binta turned her back on him. She heard him leave, heard the door close, and only then did she let herself breathe. Her hands were shaking. After all this time, all this armor she'd built, seeing him still hurt, not because she loved him, that had died, but because she'd once loved him so much, and he'd destroyed it so completely. Lauren appeared with tea, set it down without comment. Your 2 o'clock is in 15 minutes. Thank you. Alone again, Binta picked up her phone and scrolled to a photograph of her daughters. Amara and Zuri laughing at the zoo last weekend. They were happy, whole, loved. They didn't need a father who'd rejected them before they were born. But even as she thought it, Binta wondered. Would they want to know him someday? Would they resent her for keeping him away? Was she protecting them, or just protecting herself from more pain? She didn't have answers, only questions and the bitter satisfaction of watching Jason Miller finally understand what he'd lost. Her phone buzzed with a notification. The hostile takeover of Miller Global Industries had begun. Within 6 months, everything Jason had built would belong to her. Revenge tasted like ashes, but at least it was hers. Chapter 4. The Man Who Has Everything to Lose. Jason Miller had spent 4 years building a fortune on a foundation of lies, and now he could feel every brick beginning to crumble. The security guard who'd escorted him from Binta's building had been polite but firm. Jason had stood on the sidewalk, looking up at the glass tower that now represented everything he'd lost, and felt the full weight of his mistakes crushing him. She'd looked at him with such cold contempt, and he'd deserved every ounce of it. He drove to his penthouse, the luxury apartment that suddenly felt empty despite being filled with expensive furniture. Victoria was there, planning their wedding, surrounded by fabric swatches and flower arrangements. She looked up when he entered, her perfect face annoyed. "Where have you been? The caterer needs a decision today, and you promised you'd help." Jason looked at his fiancée, really looked at her for the first time in months. Victoria was beautiful, charming, exactly the kind of woman his mother would have approved of. And he felt nothing. Not love, not attraction, not even mild affection. She was there because he'd needed someone to fill the space Binta left, someone uncomplicated and safe. "I need to tell you something," Jason said. 10 minutes later, Victoria was screaming at him about wasted time and humiliation, while she threw her engagement ring at his head. It bounced off his shoulder and rolled under the couch, a 3-carat symbol of a relationship that had never been real. "You're calling off our wedding because of some ex-wife, some woman you divorced years ago. Are you insane?" "She was innocent," Jason said quietly. "Everything I believed about her was a lie, and I destroyed her for it. I have children I've never met, twin daughters who don't know I exist." "So what? You made a mistake. Move on. We all make mistakes, Jason." He looked at Victoria and realized she would never understand. She'd grown up wealthy, protected. had never faced real consequences for her actions. Mistakes to her were forgetting appointments or saying something thoughtless at a party. She couldn't comprehend the magnitude of what he'd done. "Get out," Jason said. "Take whatever you want. The wedding is cancelled. We're done." Victoria left in a fury, taking jewelry and designer clothes, throwing threats about lawsuits and public humiliation. Jason watched her go and felt nothing but relief. One more lie removed from his life, even if removing it came too late to matter. Alone in the penthouse, Jason pulled up financial reports on his computer. Miller Global Industries was in crisis. Stock prices falling, clients leaving, competitors circling like sharks. And the biggest shark was Ascend Technologies, Binta's company, buying up his debt, stealing his investors, systematically destroying everything he'd built. She wasn't just successful. She was actively ruining him. Jason couldn't even be angry about it. This was what he deserved. He'd thrown her out with nothing, and she'd built an empire while he'd coasted on family money and connections. She'd earned every victory while he'd inherited his. The irony was brutal. His phone rang. His CFO, Thomas, sounded panicked. "Jason, we need to talk. Now. 3 more investors pulled out this morning. The board is calling for an emergency meeting. They're talking about removing you as CEO." "Let them." "What?" "Jason, you can't be serious. This is your company, your family legacy." "My family legacy is built on racism and lies. Maybe it deserves to fall." Jason hung up before Thomas could respond. He spent the rest of the day in his office not working, just sitting. Thinking about the moment he'd seen those photographs of Binta, the instant rage that had consumed him, he'd wanted to believe them. That was the truth he'd been avoiding. Some part of him had always felt inadequate, had always wondered why a woman like Binta, intelligent, beautiful, genuine, would choose him. When his mother presented evidence of betrayal, it had confirmed his worst fears. He'd wanted to believe she'd betrayed him because it was easier than believing he was enough. The realization hit him like a physical blow. He'd destroyed his marriage not because of his mother's lies, but because of his own insecurity. Eleanor had given him permission to believe what he'd secretly feared all along. Jason's phone buzzed with a message from his investigator. An address. The private school where his daughters attended. Photographs of them leaving class, holding hands with Binta, smiling and carefree. He shouldn't go. He had no right. But Jason found himself driving there anyway, parking across the street as school let out. He watched from his car, hidden behind tinted windows, as children poured out of the building. Then he saw them, 2 little girls, identical in every way that mattered but distinct in small details. One wore her hair in neat braids, the other had hers in 2 puffs. They walked together laughing about something completely at ease in their world. Binta appeared and both girls ran to her. She knelt down, hugging them both, and even from a distance Jason could see the love radiating from that embrace. She'd done it, alone, with nothing. She'd built a life where their daughters were safe and happy and whole. The girl with braids, was that Amara or Zuri, looked up, and Jason saw his own eyes staring back at him. His breath caught. That was his daughter. Both of them were his daughters. They had his jawline, his nose, pieces of him mixed with Binta's beauty into something perfect. He started to open the car door, then stopped. What was he doing? He had no right to approach them, to disrupt their lives with his presence. They didn't know him, didn't need him. Binta had made that abundantly clear. Jason watched as his family drove away without him, and the grief that hit him was overwhelming. He put his head on the steering wheel and wept, deep, gasping sobs that shook his entire body. A security guard knocked on his window, asking if he was okay, and Jason drove away before he could be asked to explain why he was watching children. That night, he went to his office and started writing, a letter to his daughters, knowing they'd never read it but needing to write it anyway. He told them everything, how he'd failed their mother, how he'd failed them, how he'd been a coward who believed lies because they were easier than truth. He wrote about his regrets, his shame, his desperate wish that he could undo the past. He wrote until his hand cramped and dawn broke over the city, and still the words felt inadequate. The letter ended simply, "I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I need you to know that even though I threw you away before you were born, you were always worthy of love. Your mother knows this. She's shown you this every day of your lives. I hope someday you'll believe you deserved better than me, because you did. You do. You always will. Jason sealed the letter in an envelope addressed to Amara and Zuri Miller. Then he went to Binta's office building and left it with her assistant, knowing Binta would likely throw it away, but needing to try anyway. On his way home, his CFO called again. Jason, the board voted. You're being removed as CEO effective immediately, and there's something else you need to know. Ascend Technologies has made an offer to acquire Miller Global. They're going to own us. Your ex-wife is going to own everything. Jason hung up and kept driving. He drove past his penthouse, past the country club where his mother had held court, past the church where he'd married Binta in a ceremony his mother had barely attended. He drove until he found himself at the women's shelter where Binta had given birth to his daughters. The building was modest, underfunded, clearly struggling to serve the women who needed it. Jason went inside and asked to speak to the director. An older woman named Patricia greeted him, wariness in her eyes when he introduced himself. "What can I do for you, Mr. Miller?" "My wife stayed here 4 years ago. She gave birth to twins here. I'm the man who put her here." Patricia's expression hardened. "I remember her. Brave woman. Strong. She didn't deserve what happened to her." "I know. I need to make a donation. Anonymous. Whatever this place needs." "We need everything. Diapers, formula, legal aid, housing assistance, therapy services. We turn away women every week because we don't have space." Jason pulled out his checkbook. What would it cost to never turn anyone away? Patricia named a figure that made his CFO's warnings about company finances echo in his head. Jason wrote the check anyway, adding an extra 0. Some things mattered more than business. "This is anonymous," he repeated. "Don't tell anyone it came from me, especially not Binta Peter. If you see her again, if she ever comes back here, don't mention me." Patricia took the check, studying him. "Why are you doing this?" "Because I can't fix what I broke, but maybe I can keep it from happening to someone else." Jason left the shelter feeling hollowed out, but slightly less like a monster. It wasn't redemption. It wasn't even the beginning of redemption. But it was something other than destruction, and right now, that would have to be enough. His phone buzzed with another message from his investigator, more photographs of his daughters playing in a park with Binta. They were on swings, flying high, fearless and joyful. Jason saved the photographs to his phone and drove home to his empty penthouse, where he spent the night staring at images of the family he'd destroyed, wondering if there was any path back from this, or if some mistakes were simply unforgivable. He was beginning to suspect it was the latter. Chapter 5. The daughters he'll never know. Amara and Zuri Miller Peter were extraordinary, and they had learned to be that way because extraordinary was the only way to honor what their mother had survived. Amara woke first, as she always did, her mind already running through the day's possibilities like calculations in the equation she was determined to solve. The bedroom she shared with Zuri was painted pale yellow, sunny and warm, filled with books and art supplies and stuffed animals that were organized by size and color because Amara believed in order. Zuri slept in the bed across from her, sprawled out like a starfish, hair everywhere, completely at peace. Amara loved her sister fiercely, protectively, even though they'd entered the world only minutes apart. Those minutes mattered to Amara. She was the eldest, the responsible one, the protector. "Zuri, wake up, Mama's making breakfast." Zuri groaned, pulled a pillow over her head. "5 more minutes. You said that 10 minutes ago. If we're late, Mama has to rush, and she doesn't like rushing." That got Zuri moving. Neither girl ever wanted to make their mother's life harder. They'd heard other kids complain about their parents, whine about rules and chores, and Amara and Zuri never understood it. Their mama worked so hard, loved them so much. Making her life easier felt like the least they could do. Breakfast was pancakes, which meant it was a good day. Mama only made pancakes from scratch when she had time, when work wasn't too stressful, when she could sit with them and talk about their dreams and plans. "Good morning, my brilliant girls." "Morning, Mama." Zuri climbed into her chair, still half asleep but smiling. "Can we have extra syrup today?" "A reasonable amount of syrup," Binta corrected, but she was smiling. "And Amara, before you start calculating optimal syrup to pancake ratios, the answer is still no." Amara grinned. "You know me too well. I know you're too smart for your own good sometimes." But Binta said it with pride, the kind that made Amara feel warm inside. Over breakfast, they talked about school. Amara had chess club. Zuri had art class. Both had homework that needed finishing, friends who wanted play dates, the normal, beautiful chaos of childhood. But underneath it all, Amara noticed something different about her mother today. A tension, a distraction. "Mama, are you okay?" Binta looked up, surprised. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Why?" "You keep staring at your coffee like it did something wrong." Zuri giggled. "Bad coffee, very bad." Binta laughed, and the tension broke slightly. "You two don't miss anything, do you?" "I'm fine. Just work stuff. Nothing for you to worry about." But Amara did worry. She was good at noticing patterns, at seeing what others missed. Mama had been different lately, more distant, like she was thinking about something heavy. Amara wanted to help, but she didn't know how. At school, Amara's teacher praised her math scores while gently suggesting she let other students answer questions sometimes too. Amara tried, but it was hard when she knew the answers and others were struggling. Why waste time waiting when they could just move forward? During lunch, her friend Destiny asked about the upcoming father-daughter dance. "Are you going, Amara?" Amara felt her stomach tighten. "Probably not." "Why not? It's supposed to be really fun. My dad already bought tickets." "Because I don't have a father," Amara wanted to say, but instead she shrugged. "My mama might take me instead. She's better than a dad anyway." It was true. Mama could do everything. She went to their school events, taught them to ride bikes, read bedtime stories, helped with homework, played games, made them laugh. Who needed a father when they had someone like Mama? But sometimes, late at night when Zuri was asleep, Amara wondered. Other kids had dads. Other kids talked about their fathers teaching them things, taking them places, being there. What was that like? Did she and Zuri miss something by not having it? Mama said their father had gone away, made choices that hurt them. She never said more than that, never spoke about him with anger or sadness, just stated it like a fact. Their father existed somewhere but not in their lives, and that was that. Amara was good at accepting facts, but this one felt incomplete, like a math problem with missing variables. In art class, Zuri painted a family portrait. Her teacher, Ms. Rodriguez, admired it. "This is beautiful, Zuri. Tell me about it." "That's me and Amara and Mama. We're at the park. See the swings. We go there on Saturdays when Mama doesn't have work calls. What a lovely family. Does anyone else join you at the park?" Zuri tilted her head, thinking. "Sometimes Mama's friend Lauren comes, and once there was a photographer taking pictures of birds and he was nice, but mostly just us. We don't need anybody else." Ms. Rodriguez smiled, but there was something sad in her eyes that Zuri didn't understand. Adults always look sad when you mention not having a father, like it was supposed to be a tragedy, but Zuri didn't feel tragic. She felt loved. After school, Mama picked them up as always, and they drove home singing to songs on the radio. Their apartment was beautiful, high up with big windows that looked out over the city. Zuri loved those windows, loved watching the lights come on as evening fell, making patterns she tried to recreate in her drawings. At dinner, Zuri asked the question she'd been thinking about all day. "Mama, why don't we have a daddy?" The silence was sudden, heavy. Mama's fork paused halfway to her mouth. Amara kicked Zuri under the table, a warning to stop, but Zuri didn't understand what was wrong. "We've talked about this, baby. Mama said carefully. Your father went away before you were born. He made choices that hurt us, so we live our lives without him. But why did he go away? Did we do something wrong? No. Mama's voice was fierce now. Listen to me, both of you. You did nothing wrong. You were wanted. You were loved. Your father's choices were his own, not your fault. Never your fault. Amara spoke up, using her logical voice. So he chose to leave, even though we didn't do anything bad? Yes. That doesn't make sense, Amara said. If we didn't do anything wrong, why would he leave? Mama sighed, and Zuri suddenly wished she hadn't asked. She hated making Mama sad. But Mama reached across the table, taking both their hands. Sometimes adults make terrible choices. Your father believed something that wasn't true, and instead of finding out the truth, he decided it was easier to walk away. He gave up something precious because he was scared and proud and foolish. Us? Zuri asked. He gave up us? Yes, baby. He gave up you. But that's his loss, not yours. You two are the best thing that ever happened to me. The best thing that ever could happen. And any person who can't see how special you are doesn't deserve to be in your life. Amara processed this, her logical mind trying to make sense of emotional data. So we're better off without him. You're better off with people who choose you every single day, who fight for you, who believe in you. That's what love is, girls. Not blood or obligation, but choice. Zuri felt better after that, but Amara still looked troubled. Later, when they were supposed to be asleep, Zuri whispered across the darkness between their beds. Amara, do you ever wonder about him, our father? Sometimes, Amara admitted. I wonder what he looks like. If we inherited anything from him besides Mama's stories about his bad choices. Do you think he ever thinks about us? I don't know. Maybe. But it doesn't matter. Mama's right. He chose to leave. We didn't. We're not the ones who should feel bad. Zuri thought about this. I wish he'd chosen differently. Not for us, really. But for him. Because if we're as great as Mama says, he's missing out on something really good. Amara smiled in the darkness. We are pretty great. The greatest, Zuri agreed. They fell asleep holding hands across the space between their beds, two little girls who'd learned to be complete without a father because their mother had taught them they were already whole. But in her bedroom down the hall, Binta lay awake, thinking about Jason's letter that Lauren had given her. She hadn't opened it yet, didn't know if she could. Her daughters were asking questions now, getting older, starting to wonder. How long before they wanted more than her carefully crafted explanations? How long before they demanded to know the father who'd thrown them away? Binta pulled out her phone, stared at Jason's blocked number, and wondered if she was protecting her daughters or just protecting herself from facing him again. She still didn't have an answer when dawn broke, painting her bedroom the same pale yellow as her daughter's room, promising another day of choices she wasn't sure how to make. Chapter 6. When the past demands payment. The universe, Binta believed, had a way of ensuring debts were paid, and Jason Miller's bill had finally come due. The notification came through during Binta's morning meeting with her executive team. Her phone, usually silenced during these sessions, buzzed insistently against the mahogany table. She glanced at the screen and felt her breath catch. "Excuse me," she said, standing. "I need to take this." In the privacy of her office, Binta opened the financial alert that would change everything. Miller Global Industries had officially filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. The company was broken, bleeding, ready to be carved up and sold to the highest bidder. The highest bidder was her. Lauren knocked softly, entering with a tablet displaying dozens of news articles. Jason's face stared back from every screen, captured in photographs that showed his decline. He looked gaunt, exhausted, nothing like the confident man who'd once commanded boardrooms and broken hearts. "The board of directors is calling an emergency meeting," Lauren said. "They want to know if we're still proceeding with the acquisition." "Schedule it for this afternoon." Binta's voice was steady, controlled, And send a message to Jason Miller. I want to meet today, 2 o'clock, my office. Lauren's eyebrows rose slightly. Are you sure that's wise? Probably not. Send it anyway. Alone again, Binta stood at her floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out over the city she'd conquered through sheer force of will. Somewhere down there, Jason was losing everything. His company, his reputation, his legacy. Everything his family had built over generations was crumbling, and she held the power to save some of it, or let it all burn. The vengeful part of her wanted to watch it burn. But there was another part, smaller and quieter, that remembered loving him. That remembered the man who'd made her laugh, who'd proposed on a beach at sunset, who'd held her when her mother died and promised she'd never be alone. That man had existed once, before fear and pride had poisoned him. Her phone buzzed. Jason's response was immediate. I'll be there. The hours until 2 o'clock stretched endlessly. Binta tried to work, to focus on quarterly projections and expansion plans, but her mind kept returning to the meeting ahead. What would she say? What did she want from this? At exactly 2 o'clock, Lauren escorted Jason into her office. He looked worse in person than in photographs. His suit, once perfectly tailored, hung loose on a frame that had lost weight. Dark circles shadowed eyes that had once been sharp with confidence, but now held only resignation. Binta. He stopped himself. Miss Morrison, thank you for seeing me. Sit. Jason sat in the chair across from her desk, and the symbolism wasn't lost on either of them. She was behind the power position. He was the supplicant. Their roles had completely reversed. You know why you're here, Binta said. It wasn't a question. Miller Global is finished. You're buying the pieces. I came to ask for mercy. Mercy? Binta leaned back in her chair, studying him. That's an interesting word choice. Tell me, did you show me mercy when you threw me out? When you forced me to sign away my rights to my own children? When you called me a whore in front of your lawyers? Jason flinched but didn't look away. No. I was cruel. I was wrong. I destroyed you because I was too proud and too stupid to see the truth. And now that truth has consequences. You want mercy. I want you to know I've thought about you every day, about them. I know I have no right to see them, no right to even speak their names. But I'm begging you, don't let my company die because of my mistakes. Hundreds of people work for Miller Global. They have families, mortgages, children in college. They don't deserve to suffer because I was a coward. Binta felt something crack inside her carefully constructed armor. He was right about the employees. They weren't responsible for his sins, but making this easy for him felt wrong too. I'm buying Miller Global, she said finally. At 10 cents on the dollar, your shares will be worthless. You'll have no stake in the company, no position, no involvement whatsoever. I'll save the jobs, but you get nothing. I understand. I'm not finished. Binta pulled a document from her desk drawer, the one she'd had her lawyers prepare weeks ago when she'd known this moment was coming. In exchange for me acquiring the company and preserving those jobs, you'll sign away all parental rights to Amara and Zuri, permanently, legally. You wanted nothing to do with them when they were born. Now you'll make it official. Jason's face went white. You want me to give up my daughters? They're not your daughters. They're mine. They've always been mine. You threw them away before they existed. This just makes that abandonment legal. Binta, please. I know I don't deserve to know them, but don't make me sign away the possibility. Let me try. Let me earn the right to... Earn the right? Binta's voice rose, all her careful control shattering. You had the right. You had a wife who loved you, babies on the way, a family. You threw it all away without a second thought. Now you want to earn it back. Life doesn't work that way, Jason. Some things once destroyed can't be rebuilt. I'll do anything. Work for you. Sign whatever you want about the company. Just don't make me give them up completely, please. Binta stood, walking to the window so he wouldn't see her face. Her hands were shaking. She'd prepared for this moment, scripted her words, planned to be cold and unmoved. But seeing him broken, hearing him beg, wasn't as satisfying as she'd imagined. You have 24 hours to decide, she said. Sign the papers giving up your daughters, and I'll save your company. Refuse, and I'll let Miller Global die completely. Every employee will lose their jobs. Your family legacy will be erased. Everything your grandfather built will be gone. The choice is yours." "That's not a choice, that's cruelty." Binta turned to face him, and her eyes were hard. "Yes, it is. Welcome to my world, Jason. This is what cruelty feels like. How does it taste?" Jason stood, his legs unsteady. "I won't sign. I can't. Those girls are my daughters, whether I've met them or not. I won't legally abandon them, not even to save the company." "Then you've made your choice. Lauren will show you out." As Jason reached the door, he paused. "I wrote them a letter. Did you give it to them?" "No." "Will you?" "I don't know. They're happy, Jason. They're loved. They don't need a father who destroyed their mother because he was too weak to believe in her. I know they don't need me, but maybe someday they'll want to know I exist. That I'm sorry. That I think about them every day and wish I could undo everything." "Your wishes don't matter. They never did." Jason left, and Binta collapsed into her chair, her hands pressed against her face. She'd won. He'd refused to sign, which meant she could let Miller Global die, and he'd have nothing. Complete victory. So why did she feel hollow? Her phone buzzed with messages from her board, asking about the meeting, media outlets requesting comments on the acquisition, lawyers needing signatures on documents, the machinery of revenge grinding forward, efficient and merciless. That evening, after putting Amara and Zuri to bed, Binta sat in her living room with Jason's letter. She'd kept it, hidden in her desk, unable to throw it away, but unwilling to read it. Now she opened the envelope and began to read his words to the daughters he'd never met. The letter was raw, honest, devastating. He took full responsibility, made no excuses, asked for nothing. He simply told them they deserved better than him, that their mother was extraordinary, that their existence was something beautiful he'd been too blind to see. Binta cried reading it, tears she'd sworn she wouldn't shed over Jason Miller ever again. But these tears weren't for him. They were for what could have been, for the family they might have had if his mother hadn't lied and he hadn't been so quick to believe the worst. Her phone rang. It was Lauren, calling after hours, which meant it was urgent. "Ms. Morrison, I thought you should know. Jason Miller was just taken to the hospital, apparent overdose. They're saying it might have been intentional." Binta's breath stopped. "Is he alive?" "Yes, he's stable, but Binta, you should also know he left a note. The hospital called because they found your business card in his wallet, marked as his emergency contact." "What did the note say?" Lauren's voice was quiet. It said, "Tell Binta she was right. Some things can't be undone. I'm sorry I couldn't be the man my daughters deserved." Binta hung up and stood in her living room, staring at nothing. Jason had tried to kill himself. The man she'd once loved, the father of her children, had been so broken by everything that he'd wanted to die. She should feel victorious. She'd destroyed him as thoroughly as he'd destroyed her. Perfect revenge. Instead, she felt sick. Binta walked to her daughter's room, stood in the doorway watching them sleep. Amara was curled on her side, Zuri sprawled across her bed. Beautiful, innocent, untouched by the ugliness their parents had created. They deserved better than both of them. Jason was right about that. Binta pulled out her phone and called her driver. She had to go to the hospital, had to see him, not because she forgave him, but because if he died, her daughters would never have the choice to know him. And that choice should be theirs, not hers, no matter how much it terrified her to give them that power. Chapter 7. The Price of Pride. Some men learn humility through wisdom. Jason Miller was learning it through devastation, and the lesson was brutal. Jason woke in a hospital bed with tubes in his arms and regret in his veins. The nurse who checked his vitals was kind but distant, the way healthcare workers learned to be with patients who'd tried to exit life early. A psychiatrist would evaluate him soon. There would be questions about intent, about safety plans, about whether he was a danger to himself. He was. That was the truth. Not because he wanted to die exactly, but because living with what he'd done felt impossible. The door opened, and Binta walked in. Jason's heart seized. She looked exhausted, her perfect composure cracked, wearing jeans and a sweater instead of her usual armor of business suits. This was Binta as he remembered her, before power and revenge had made her untouchable. "You're alive," she said, and her voice carried relief and anger in equal measure. "Disappointed? Don't." Binta sat in the chair beside his bed, and Jason could see the strain in her face. "Don't make jokes. Don't be flippant. You almost died, Jason. You took pills because you couldn't handle losing, and that's the most selfish thing you've done yet." "I wasn't trying to be selfish. I was trying to stop being a burden." "A burden to who? You barely exist in my life. You're not in your daughter's lives at all. You were only going to be a burden to yourself, and you couldn't even handle that." Jason looked away, shame burning through him. "You're right. I'm weak. I always have been. Strong men don't believe lies about their wives. Strong men don't throw away their children. Strong men don't try to escape their mistakes by swallowing pills." Binta was quiet for a long moment. "Why did you do it? Really?" "Because you were right about everything. I can't fix what I broke. I can't earn forgiveness. I can't be the father my daughters deserve or the man you needed. I'm just this hollow thing walking around wearing Jason Miller's face, and I'm tired of pretending there's anything inside worth saving." That's self-pity talking. That's truth talking. Jason finally met her eyes. "You built an empire while raising twins alone. You turned your pain into power, your suffering into success. You're extraordinary, Binta. You always were. I destroyed you and you rebuilt yourself into something stronger. Meanwhile, I lost one company and fell apart completely. We're not the same. We never were." Binta stood, pacing the small room. "You think this is easy for me? You think I don't wake up some nights wondering if I'm doing the right thing, keeping you from them? You think I don't see their faces when other kids talk about their fathers and feel guilty?" "Then let me try," Jason said desperately. "Not for me, for them. Let me prove I can be better." "How? By almost dying? By showing them their father is so unstable he tries to kill himself when life gets hard? That's not better, Jason. That's worse." Her words hit like physical blows, and Jason knew she was right. He'd thought ending his life would spare everyone pain, but all he'd done was prove he was still thinking only of himself. "I'm going to ask you something," Binta said, turning to face him. "And I want complete honesty. When I was 6 months pregnant and you threw me out, did any part of you hesitate? Did you ever, even for a second, question whether I might be telling the truth?" Jason wanted to lie. Wanted to say yes, he'd doubted, he'd struggled. But she'd asked for honesty, and after everything, that was all he could give her. "No, I believed the evidence immediately. I wanted to believe it." "Why?" "Because I was insecure. Because I always wondered why someone like you would marry someone like me. My mother spent my whole life telling me people would want me for my money, that I needed to be careful, that love was something other people used as a weapon. When she showed me those photographs, it confirmed everything I'd been afraid of. It was easier to believe you'd betrayed me than to believe I was enough." Binta's eyes glistened. "So you destroyed our family because of your insecurity, because you couldn't trust that I actually loved you?" "Yes, and I'm so sorry. I know sorry means nothing, changes nothing. But I'm sorry anyway. I'm sorry for every moment of pain I caused. I'm sorry for every night you spent alone. I'm sorry for every milestone I missed. I'm sorry your daughters don't have a father because I was too weak to be one." "Stop apologizing," Binta said sharply. "Stop saying sorry like it means something. You know what would mean something? Actually changing. Actually becoming a man worthy of knowing them. But you can't do that from a hospital bed after a suicide attempt, can you?" "I'll do better. I'll go to therapy. I'll work on myself. You'll what? Fix yourself? People don't fix themselves in a few weeks because they got caught. Real change takes years. Consistency. Proof over and over that you're different." Jason's heart sank. Then tell me what to do, please. Give me a roadmap, a plan, anything. Binta laughed, but it was bitter. You want me to tell you how to be a decent human being? That's not my job, Jason. I already raised 2 children alone. I'm not raising you too. I'm not asking you to raise me. I'm asking for a chance to prove I can do it myself. And if you fail? If you let them down the way you let me down? They're 4 years old. They don't understand adult complications. They just know abandonment. I won't let you abandon them twice. I wouldn't. You already tried to abandon them permanently tonight. Binta's voice rose, cracking. You tried to die rather than face your mistakes. What happens when being a father gets hard? When they're teenagers who test boundaries? When life gets complicated? Do you take more pills? Do you run again? How can I trust you with their hearts when you can't even handle your own? Jason had no answer. She was right. He'd proven tonight that when things got unbearable, his instinct was to escape rather than endure. That wasn't father material. That was the opposite of everything children needed. I want to be better, he said finally. Not for you, not even for them, really, but for myself, because right now I hate who I am. And whether you let me near them or not, I need to become someone I can live with. Binta studied him, and Jason felt examined, assessed, found wanting. The psychiatrist is going to evaluate you. They'll probably recommend inpatient treatment for a while. You're going to go. You're going to actually participate, actually work on yourself, not just go through the motions. I will. And when you get out, you're going to start volunteering. Women's shelters, single-parent support groups, places where you can actually help people instead of just wallowing in your own misery. Okay. And you're not going to contact me or try to see the girls until I say you can. Which might be never. You'll live with that uncertainty, that lack of control, because that's what you gave me 4 years ago. Jason nodded, throat tight. Anything else? Yes. Sign the papers giving up your controlling interest in Miller Global. I'm buying it anyway, but I want you to do it willingly. Show me you can put other people first. Done. I'll sign today. Binta moved toward the door, then paused. Jason, that letter you wrote to them, it was good, honest. Someday when they're old enough to understand, I'll let them read it. Not now, but someday. Hope flared in Jason's chest, small but real. Thank you. Don't thank me. Thank whatever instinct made you write truth instead of excuses. That's the only reason I'm not walking away forever. She left, and Jason was alone with beeping machines and his own thoughts. A nurse came in to check his vitals, mentioned the psychiatrist would see him soon, reminded him he wasn't cleared to leave. Jason nodded to all of it, barely hearing. Binta hadn't forgiven him, she'd made that clear. But she hadn't closed the door completely either. Someday wasn't much, but it was more than never. It was a sliver of possibility in an ocean of consequences. Jason spent the next week in psychiatric care, group therapy sessions where other broken people shared their pain, individual sessions where a patient doctor named Roberts helped him untangle years of dysfunction. He learned he'd inherited more from his mother than money. He'd inherited her fear, her prejudice, her inability to trust anything that didn't fit her narrow worldview. Unlearning that would take time, maybe forever. But he had to try. When he was released, Jason's penthouse felt foreign. He sold it, moved to a modest apartment, donated most of his remaining money to organizations supporting single mothers. He started volunteering at the same women's shelter where Binta had given birth, never mentioning his connection, just showing up and doing the work. He met women who reminded him of Binta, strong and struggling, rebuilding lives from nothing. He changed diapers, helped with job applications, listened to stories that broke his heart. Slowly, painfully, he began to understand what he'd done. Not theoretically, but viscerally. He saw what it looked like when women were thrown away by men who should have protected them. He saw what he'd done to his wife. Months passed. Jason stopped checking his phone for messages from Binta, stopped driving past his daughter's school, stopped hoping for miracles. He just lived, day by day, trying to be better than he'd been the day before. It wasn't redemption. It wasn't even close. But it was something other than destruction. And late at night, when he was alone, Jason would pull up the one photograph he had of his daughters, taken from a distance, not quite clear enough to capture details, but enough to remind him they existed. They were real. They were growing up without him, and maybe that was what he deserved. Chapter 8. When Children Ask the Hard Questions. The truth Amara had learned from watching her mother was something adults feared because children understood it too clearly. The school project came home on a Tuesday afternoon, innocuous in its purple folder, but devastating in its implications. Family Tree was written across the top in cheerful letters with instructions to fill in names, birth dates, and interesting facts about parents and grandparents. Amara stared at the empty spaces where father should be listed and felt something twist in her chest. She glanced at Zuri, who was looking at the same blank spaces with that expression she got when she was trying to understand something that hurt. "We could just leave it blank," Amara suggested, "or write N.A. like on forms." "But he exists," Zuri said softly. "Right? Mama said he went away. Not that he never was." They took the project to their mother, who was making dinner in the kitchen. Binta looked at the paper, and something flickered across her face too fast to identify before her usual calm returned. "You could put my information twice," Binta offered. "Some families have 2 mums or 2 dads. Some have 1 parent. Yours has me." "But we have a father," Amara pressed, using her logical voice that meant she wouldn't accept deflection. "We know we do. We've seen our birth certificates. They say Father Jason Miller, so he's real. He just isn't here." Binta set down the spoon she'd been stirring with. "You've been looking at your birth certificates?" "They're our documents," Amara pointed out. "We have a right to see them." "I wanted to know his name," Zuri admitted. "To know what to call him. In my head, I mean, when I wonder about him." Binta pulled out a chair and sat down, gesturing for her daughters to join her. This was serious conversation posture, the kind reserved for important talks that needed undivided attention. "Okay, you're right. You deserve to know. Ask me anything." Amara and Zuri exchanged glances, silently deciding who would speak first. Finally, Amara asked the question that had been building for months. "Why did he leave? What did we do wrong?" "Nothing." Binta's voice was fierce, immediate. "You did absolutely nothing wrong. Let me be very clear about this. Your father left because he believed something about me that wasn't true. His mother, your grandmother, lied to him. She made up evidence that I had been unfaithful, and instead of asking me, instead of believing me, he chose to believe the lies." "What kind of evidence?" Zuri asked. "Photographs that looked real but weren't. Witnesses who were paid to lie. Documents that were forged." She was very thorough. Amara's mind worked through this. "So he was tricked. But why didn't he check? Why didn't he trust you?" "Because trust is hard when you're scared. Your father's mother spent his whole life teaching him to be suspicious, to expect the worst from people. When she gave him proof of something he'd always feared might be true, he believed it without question." "That's not logical," Amara said. "If you love someone, you should trust them." "You're right. But people aren't always logical when they're scared." Zuri, quieter, asked, "Does he know about us? That we exist?" Binta hesitated, and in that hesitation, Amara saw the truth. "He does now. His mother confessed before she died. He knows he made a terrible mistake." "Has he tried to see us?" Amara felt her heart beating faster. "Yes. And you said no." It wasn't a question. Amara could read her mother perfectly. "I said not yet. Maybe not ever. I don't know." "Why?" Zuri's eyes were filling with tears. "If he knows he was wrong and he's sorry, why can't we meet him?" Binta took both their hands. "Because sorry isn't always enough, babies. He hurt us badly. He threw us away when we needed him most, and I need to protect you from being hurt like that again." "But we're already hurt," Zuri said, and her honesty cut through the room like glass. "We're the only kids in our class without dads. Everyone else has someone to bring to father-daughter dances and sports days and career days. We pretend it doesn't matter, but it does." "I can come to those things," Binta said desperately. "I always come." "And you're amazing," Amara added quickly, seeing her mother's pain. "You're the best mom ever, but Zuri's right. There's still something missing, and maybe it would hurt less if we knew him, if we could decide for ourselves whether he's worth forgiving." "You're 4 years old," Binta said. "You shouldn't have to make decisions like that." "We're almost 5, Amara corrected. "And you're always saying we're mature for our age. So let us be mature about this. Let us meet him. Let us see who our father is." Binta looked between her daughters, these brilliant, compassionate, impossibly wise little humans she'd created. "What if he disappoints you? What if he lets you down?" "Then we'll know," Zuri said simply. "And knowing is better than wondering. You taught us that." That night, after her daughters were asleep, Binta called Jason's number for the first time since he'd been released from psychiatric care. He answered on the first ring, voice rough with surprise. "Binta? The girls know about you. They want to meet you." Silence. Then, "What?" "They had a school project about family trees. They asked questions." I answered honestly. "They want to meet their father." When? How? What do I? "Not yet. I need time to prepare them. And you need to prove you can handle this." "Can you?" "Yes. Anything. I'll do whatever you need. Here's what I need. You're going to write them letters, 1 every week. Nothing manipulative, nothing asking for things. Just letters telling them about yourself, your childhood, your interests, what you're doing now. Help them know who you are before they meet you. I can do that. And you're going to keep volunteering, keep going to therapy, keep becoming someone worth knowing, because if you meet them and then disappoint them, if you let them down the way you let me down, I will make sure you never see them again. Are we clear?" "Crystal clear." "Good. I'll contact you when I'm ready. It might be weeks. It might be months. You'll wait. I'll wait forever if I have to." Binta hung up and stood in her living room, hands shaking. She'd just opened a door she'd sworn would stay closed. Her daughters had done that, with their honesty and their wisdom and their refusal to accept that some questions shouldn't be asked. She walked to their room, stood in the doorway watching them sleep. Amara on her side, analytical even in dreams. Zuri sprawled out, heart wide open to the world. They were so young, so brave, so ready to take risks she wanted to protect them from. But maybe that was the point. Maybe her job wasn't to protect them from every possibility of pain, but to teach them how to face it with strength and grace. Maybe her daughters were teaching her what forgiveness could look like, even when it scared her to death. Chapter 9. The Breaking Point. Redemption, Jason had discovered, was not a destination. It was a cliff edge you had to jump from without knowing if anyone would catch you. The first letter Jason wrote to his daughters took him 3 days and 17 drafts. How did you introduce yourself to children who should have known you from birth? What tone struck the right balance between honest and appropriate? He consulted his therapist Roberts, who offered guidance but no answers. "There's no perfect way to do this," Roberts said during their session. "Just be genuine. Tell them true things. Let them see who you really are." Jason finally settled on simplicity. He told them his name, his age, what he did for work before losing the company. He told them he'd made terrible mistakes but was trying to learn from them. He told them he thought about them every single day. He didn't mention their mother except to say she was the strongest person he'd ever known. Didn't make excuses for his absence. Didn't promise things he couldn't guarantee. Just gave them small, honest pieces of himself. He sent the letter through Binta's assistant, unsure if his daughters would ever read it. But writing it mattered. Each week he wrote another. In the second letter, he told them about his childhood, growing up wealthy but lonely, with parents who were more interested in appearances than affection. In the third, he described his volunteer work, helping women who reminded him that strength came in many forms. Week after week, Jason wrote to daughters he'd never met, pouring truth onto pages they might never read. It became meditation, therapy, penance all at once. Meanwhile, his life continued to shrink in ways that should have felt like failure, but instead felt like freedom. He lived simply in his small apartment, worked part-time at a community center, spent his days helping others instead of building empires. The work was hard, often thankless, but it was real in ways his previous life never had been. One Tuesday afternoon at the shelter, Jason was helping a young mother named Nicole fill out job applications when she asked about his background. "I used to be a CEO," he admitted. "Lost everything because I made horrible choices." Nicole studied him. "You seem okay now, though. Not broken. I'm very broken. I'm just learning to be broken in better ways." She laughed. "That's a weird goal. It's the only one I've got." 3 months into writing letters, Jason received a response, not from his daughters, but from Binta. The envelope contained photographs of Amara and Zuri at various ages, newborns in the hospital, 1-year-olds taking first steps, 2-year-olds covered in birthday cake, 3-year-olds starting preschool, 4-year-olds on their first day at their current school. Every milestone he'd missed, captured in glossy paper. Jason spread them across his kitchen table and wept, seeing his daughters grow up in fast forward, seeing their faces change, their personalities emerge. Amara's serious expression even as a toddler, Zuri's constant smile. Both of them beautiful, both of them proof of what he'd thrown away. A note accompanied the photos. "They read your letters. They have questions. We're not ready for meeting yet, but maybe soon. Keep writing. Keep working on yourself. Show me this isn't temporary." Jason pinned one photo to his refrigerator, the girls at age 4, arms around each other, laughing at something off camera. Every morning he looked at that photograph and remembered why he was doing this. Not for redemption, which might never come, but because his daughters deserved a father who was trying, even if he never succeeded. One evening, Jason's phone rang with an unknown number. He almost didn't answer, wary of anything unexpected, but something made him pick up. "Mr. Miller, this is Patricia from Horizon Women's Center. I'm calling because one of our residents specifically asked for you." Jason drove to the shelter immediately. Nicole, the young mother he'd been helping, was in crisis. Her abusive ex had found her location. She was terrified, considering running again, which would mean leaving behind the job she'd just gotten and the stability she'd been building. "I don't know what to do," Nicole sobbed. "I finally felt safe, and now I have to disappear again." Jason listened, then asked, "What if you didn't have to run? What if we got you a lawyer, filed for a restraining order, made this official? You have rights. Let me help you fight. I can't afford a lawyer. I know some who work pro bono, and if they won't help, I'll pay. You shouldn't have to keep running." Over the next 2 weeks, Jason coordinated Nicole's legal defense. He called in favors from former colleagues who owed him, found her a safe temporary housing situation, even testified in court about her character and situation. The restraining order was granted. Nicole could stay, could keep building her life without running. She hugged him in the courthouse hallway, crying, "Why are you doing all this for me? You don't even know me." "Because someone I loved had to run. Had to start over with nothing, and no one helped her. I can't fix that, but maybe I can help you." That night, Jason wrote his daughters about Nicole's case, about learning that helping others was the only thing that made his mistakes feel less pointless. He wrote about understanding, finally, what their mother had survived. He wrote about trying to become someone who added good to the world instead of just taking from it. 2 days later, his phone rang. Binta's voice came through, careful, but not cold. "The shelter director called me. Patricia, she wanted me to know what you did for Nicole." "I was just helping. That's what volunteers do." "No. You went beyond helping. You used your resources, your connections, your privilege to make someone's life genuinely better. That's not just volunteering. That's actually caring." Jason didn't know what to say. "The girls want to meet you," Binta continued. "Not right away, but soon. I'm thinking supervised visits. short ones at first, in public places where they feel safe. Hope surged so strongly Jason had to sit down. When? 3 weeks. I need to prepare them, set boundaries, make sure everyone understands this is trial. One mistake, one disappointment, and it's over. I understand. Do you? Because this isn't about you anymore, Jason. This is about 2 little girls who've decided to give you a chance you don't deserve. If you hurt them, if you let them down, if you prove you're still the man who threw us away, I will spend the rest of my life making sure you regret it. I know, and I won't. I swear on everything I am or will ever be, I won't hurt them. Binta was quiet for a moment. 3 weeks, Saturday afternoon. I'll text you the details. Don't be late. She hung up, and Jason sat in his small apartment holding his phone like it was something precious. 3 weeks until he met his daughters. 3 weeks to prepare for the most important moment of his life. He looked at their photograph on his refrigerator, at their smiling faces frozen in time, and made a promise. I'll be ready. I'll be worthy. I'll be the father you should have had from the beginning, even if I have to spend every day of the rest of my life earning it. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of preparation. Jason bought age-appropriate books to read up on child development, consulted with Roberts about managing anxiety during the meeting, practiced conversations in his mirror that felt ridiculous but necessary. He bought a small gift for each girl, nothing extravagant, just thoughtful. For Amara, a chess set after Binta mentioned she was learning the game. For Zuri, an art supply set after learning she loved to draw. Small things, meaningful things, the kind of gifts a father would give if he'd been paying attention all along. The night before the meeting, Jason couldn't sleep. He lay awake imagining every possible scenario, preparing for disappointment, but hoping for grace. At dawn, he gave up on sleep and went for a run, trying to burn off nervous energy that felt endless. This was it. The moment that would define whether his journey meant anything, or if he was still the broken man who'd tried to escape through pills and cowardice. Tomorrow, he would meet his daughters. Tomorrow, he would begin the longest, hardest work of his life. Tomorrow, he would try to earn something that could never be deserved, but only given freely, by 2 little girls who understood forgiveness better than any adult he'd ever known. Chapter 10. The day the world shifted. Some reunions are gentle, like rain after drought, but this one was a storm that had been building for 4 years, and when it broke, everything changed. The park Binta chose was public, neutral, filled with families enjoying the afternoon sunshine. Jason arrived early, sitting on a bench near the playground, trying to control his breathing. His hands shook, his heart felt too big for his chest. He'd faced boardrooms full of hostile investors with less anxiety than this moment. At exactly 2 o'clock, Binta appeared with 2 small girls holding her hands. Jason stood, and his legs nearly gave out. They were real. His daughters were real. Amara walked on Binta's right, serious and watchful, eyes taking in everything with analytical precision. Zuri was on the left, curious and open, already smiling slightly despite not knowing him. They were both wearing matching dresses in different colors, their hair styled identically but distinctly, marking them as twins, but also individuals. They were the most beautiful things Jason had ever seen. Binta stopped several feet away, creating a buffer zone. "Girls, this is Jason Miller, your father." Jason's knees buckled. He didn't plan it, didn't mean to, but suddenly he was kneeling on the grass, tears streaming down his face, overwhelmed by the reality of them. Not dramatic performance, but genuine collapse of a man confronting what he'd destroyed. "I'm sorry," he managed through tears. "I'm so sorry." Amara approached first, cautious but curious, studying him like a puzzle to be solved. "You look different than in the photographs Mama showed us." "Thinner probably," Jason said, wiping his face. "I've been working hard to become better." Zuri followed her sister, softer in her approach. "Why are you crying?" "Because I missed everything. Your first words, first steps, first days of school. I missed becoming your father. I missed watching you grow up. And that's my fault, not yours." The girls exchanged glances, some silent communication passing between them. Then Zuri asked, "Do you want to be our father now?" "More than anything. But I know I have to earn that. I can't just show up and expect you to love me or even like me. I have to prove I deserve to be in your lives." Amara, always logical, asked, "How do you prove something like that?" "By showing up, by being consistent, by listening when you talk and being honest when I don't know answers, by never ever throwing you away again." Jason's voice cracked. "By becoming someone you can count on, even if it takes years." Binta spoke from where she stood, watching carefully. "Girls, you can ask him anything. This is your time." "Why did you believe grandmother's lies?" Amara asked, direct and unflinching. Jason met her eyes, his daughter's eyes, and answered with complete honesty. "Because I was scared. Your grandmother spent my whole life teaching me not to trust people, especially people who were different from us. When she gave me evidence that your mother betrayed me, I believed it because it confirmed what I'd always feared. I was wrong. I should have trusted the woman I loved, but I was too weak and too proud." "That's not logical," Amara said. "You're right. Fear rarely is." Zuri asked, "Do you love us?" The question destroyed him. "I didn't know how to love you when you weren't here yet. But I think about you every single day. I wonder what you're doing, what makes you laugh, what scares you. I want to know everything about you. Is that love? I don't know. But I want the chance to find out." "You can't just decide to love someone," Amara pointed out. "Love develops over time, through shared experiences and trust." "You're absolutely right, which is why I'm not asking you to love me. I'm asking for the chance to earn your trust first. Love, if it comes, can come later." Binta sat on a nearby bench, giving them space, but staying close. The girls sat on the grass near Jason, not quite touching but not running away either. They asked questions for the next hour. What was his favorite color? What did he do for work now? Did he like books? What was he afraid of? Jason answered everything honestly. His favorite color was blue, like the ocean. He worked at a community center helping single mothers. He loved reading but hadn't done much of it lately. He was afraid of disappointing them, of proving he was still the man who'd failed so spectacularly before. "You already disappointed us once," Amara said matter-of-factly, "by not being there from the beginning. So if you disappoint us again, that would be twice. 2 times is a pattern." "You're right. No more patterns of disappointment, only patterns of showing up." Zuri pointed to the swings. "Can you push us?" Jason looked at Binta, asking permission without words. She nodded once, tense but allowing it. The girls ran to the swings, and Jason followed, pushing them gently, listening to them laugh, feeling something fundamental shift inside him. This was what he'd missed. Not grand moments or major milestones, but this. Simple joy, shared laughter, the ordinary magic of being present. He'd thrown this away for pride, for fear, for lies he'd chosen to believe. "Higher!" Zuri called, and Jason pushed harder, watching his daughter fly. After swings came the playground equipment. Jason spotted them climbing structures, caught them at the bottom of slides, listened to them explain the rules of games he didn't understand. They were brilliant, both of them, in completely different ways. Amara analyzed everything, explaining physics of seesaws and optimal swing trajectories. Zuri narrated stories about the playground being a castle or a spaceship or whatever her imagination needed it to be. 2 hours passed like minutes. Finally, Binta called them over. "Time to go, girls. Say goodbye." "Do we have to?" Zuri asked, and hope flared in Jason's chest. "Yes, but if everyone's comfortable, maybe we can do this again." The girls looked at Jason, then at each other, then at their mother. "Can we?" Amara asked. Binta studied Jason's face, searching for something. Whatever she found must have satisfied her because she nodded. "We'll see, but only if you want to." "We want to," both girls said together. They didn't hug Jason goodbye. That was too soon, too much. But Zuri waved and Amara said, "You're not as scary as I thought you'd be." "That's probably the nicest thing anyone said to me in years," Jason admitted. As they walked away, Binta turned back once. Their eyes met across the playground, and Jason saw something he hadn't seen in years. Not forgiveness exactly, but maybe the possibility of it. The door wasn't open, but it was no longer locked. Jason sat on the bench long after they'd gone, crying again, but differently this time. Not from grief, but from relief. From hope. From the overwhelming knowledge that he'd been given something he could never earn, but that his daughters had chosen to give him anyway. 3 weeks later, another supervised visit. This time the girls brought drawings they'd made. Zuri had painted him in bright colors, surrounded by flowers. Amara had created a mathematical representation of their family tree, complete with calculations he didn't understand but pretended to follow. "You kept them," Jason said, looking at the artwork. "We wanted you to have them," Zuri explained, "so you remember us when we're not here. I could never forget you, but I'll treasure these forever." Visits became regular, once a week, then twice. Always supervised, always in public, always with Binta nearby. But slowly, carefully, Jason began to know his daughters. He learned Amara loved chess and was already beating adults at the community center. He learned Zuri could draw anything from memory and had synesthesia, seeing colors when she heard music. He learned they were kind, compassionate, wise beyond their years because they'd had to be. They'd learned strength from their mother, resilience from their situation, and somehow still had enough grace to give their father a chance. 4 months after their first meeting, during a visit to an art museum Zuri had wanted to see, Amara asked, "Do you think you could come to Father-Daughter Day at school?" Jason's breath caught. "If your mother says it's okay, I would be honored." He looked at Binta, who was standing near a sculpture, pretending not to listen but clearly hearing everything. She met his eyes, and he saw her fear. The fear that he'd let them down, that this was temporary, that he'd proved to be the man he'd been instead of the man he was trying to become. "We'll talk about it," Binta said finally. That night she called him after the girls were asleep. "They like you," she said. And it didn't sound like an accusation, but it didn't sound happy either. "They're getting attached." "Is that bad?" "It's terrifying, because if you disappoint them now, if you prove this was all temporary, it will destroy them, and I'll never forgive you, not in this life or any other. I won't, I promise. Don't promise, just show up, keep showing up, prove it through consistency, not words." "I will. Binta, I know this doesn't fix what I did to you. I know I can't undo the past. But thank you. Thank you for giving me this chance. I didn't give it to you. They did. They're better people than either of us." She hung up, and Jason sat in his small apartment, looking at the drawings his daughters had made him, at the photographs on his fridge, at the life he'd built from ruins. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't even close to perfect. He was a father meeting his daughters years too late, trying to build relationships that should have existed from birth. There was no fairy tale ending, no moment where everything was forgiven and forgotten, but there was this. 2 little girls who'd decided he was worth knowing, a woman who'd survived his worst and still found strength to let him near her children, supervised visits that felt like miracles, small moments of connection that meant everything. Forgiveness wasn't something Binta could give him yet, might never be able to give him. But her daughters were teaching them both what it could look like, not erasing the past but learning to live with it, not forgetting what happened but choosing to move forward anyway. The door wasn't wide open, but it was ajar, letting in light and possibility, and that, after everything, was more than Jason had ever deserved and more than he'd believed possible. It was enough. For now, it was enough.